Hello everyone and welcome to Medford Anywhere Learning TV. We're glad you're tuned in. We want to give a shout out to our friends at Southern Oregon PBS, KTVL, KDRV, and the Dove Network. Thank you for hosting us on your station. In the Medford School District, we have one shared vision, and that we believe that all are learning, and learning is for all. And what better place to do that than right here on Medford Anywhere Learning TV.
Hello, my name is Allura Del Duca and I teach second grade at Howard Elementary School. And today we're going to be making Play-Doh. And because I am a second grade teacher, I have chosen two second grade learning targets. So I have both a reading target and a math target. So for reading, right here, it says, I can ask and answer such questions as why and how to demonstrate understanding of key details in a text, which for our text today, we have a recipe. And so we'll be asking questions like, why did I put that in first? Why couldn't I put it in later? Why do I need to have that? Or how will I know when it's done? And how do I know if I really need a certain ingredient? And then we are also going to be working on math because we're measuring, and that is a math skill, but really we're going to focus on this math target when we're done with our Play-Doh. And it says, I can recognize and draw shapes having specified attributes, such as a given number of angles or a given number of equal faces. So that means that when we have our Play-Doh, we're going to roll it out and we're going to play with it and make some two-dimensional shapes and talk about sides and angles. And then we're also going to get to make three-dimensional solid figures, which we'll talk about the shapes on the faces. So that's what we're doing today. And so if you're a second grader, this is going to be perfect for you. If you're a first grader, I bet you can do it. And if you are a third grader, you might be able to challenge yourself and figure out some ways to make it a little bit more like a third grade math lesson for you. And for parents out there, thank you very much for helping out. There's one part where we do need to have an adult. And at the end, I have a lot of extension activities. So if you wanted to use this idea and make more, or maybe put it into some science or art lessons, you have that option as well. So let's get started. Because we are reading for information, we want to read slowly, and we want to make sure that if we have a question, we go back and we reread it. So whenever you do a recipe, you want to read it all the way through at least one time. My daughter, Sierra, who I'm going to shout out to right now, she did all of this beautiful work on the slides. She actually made this as an example, and she forgot to put in an ingredient until she came to me and she said, it's so sticky, I don't know. What did I do? And I said, did you put the oil in? Oh, I forgot that one. So it's really important that you read it all and double check that you are doing all of the steps. So what we are going to do is I'm going to read this right now and I will show you what I have. So the ingredient list has a half cup of flour, and any sort of flour should do there. I have white right here, but my daughter used whole wheat and they were different brands, so that doesn't matter. Then we also have 2 tablespoons of salt. 2 tablespoons, you probably have that in a salt shaker somewhere around your house. Then we have cream of tartar, and it says optional under that. Optional, what does optional mean? It means it's an option. You don't have to have it. So we're going to have that, or if you don't have it around the house, it doesn't matter. Then we also need a 1/4 cup of water and 5 drops of food coloring. Again, that's optional, which means if you don't want to have color in your Play-Doh and you don't have some of this around, that's okay. You want to just make white then. And you know what? You could probably figure out some way to color it afterwards. The last ingredient we have is 1 teaspoon of cooking oil. And it does not, again, matter what type of oil. You could have olive oil. I'm using canola or vegetable. Now we have materials. They're the blue ones right here. So you want to have a bowl, which this is about a medium-sized bowl or maybe a large cereal bowl. You want to have a fork to stir things with, and we want to have some measuring cups. So measuring cups measure volume. Volume means how much something can hold. This is a 1 cup, and I'm using a half cup because that's how much it is, but I wanted to see the difference. So half would be half. You need 2 half cups to fill up 1 cup. I have this measuring spoon. This is a kind of a cool one. You usually will see them, they're sort of nested in each other, and they are metal. This one has a tablespoon on one side and a teaspoon on one side though, and I just need those 2. And if you want to save your Play-Doh, you need to have some sort of container to put it in that's airtight so that it'll stay good and you can use it over and over again. And for our math lesson afterwards, I have a butter knife. You don't have to have a butter knife. You could mold it and press it, but it's kind of nice to be able to cut shapes as well. All right, so let's get started on making this. I again want to be able to read everything so I know what I'm going to do. So it tells me measure the flour, salt, and cream of tartar into the bowl. So I'm going to put all those in my bowl, and I'm imagining in my head, why don't I put the water in there first? And then I'm going to keep reading. Okay, let's see. It says the cream of tartar is a preservative and not essential. I wonder what not essential means. Sometimes if you read on, it'll tell you, which means you can leave it out. Oh, that's what essential or not essential means. If it's not essential, it means I don't need it. I can leave it out. And number 2, stir the dry ingredients together using a fork. Ask an adult to bring water to a boil. Ooh, that's where I need to make sure I have an adult. Well, fortunately, I am an adult, but let's say I wasn't. I would go over here and say, hey, Mom, I need you to boil some water for me. Or maybe you'd like to put it in the microwave. You can put it in the microwave too, or even put it in a pan on the stove. But make sure you have an adult do this part for you. Now, be careful when you touch anything hot. Oh, that's why they have the adult do it, because you want to be careful. Have the adult pour a 1/4 cup of the hot water into a measuring cup. If you have food coloring, add about 5 drops to the water. Pour the water into the flour mixture. So while I'm reading this in my head, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I can kind of act it out and visualize it. So I'm thinking to myself, why would I put the food coloring in the water instead of in the bowl with the flour? I don't know. It's a good question. And so when I do it, maybe I'll have a good idea about what I need to do and why when I see it happen. Okay. Then stir, and then add the oil. Good thing I remember to read that part. I don't want to be like Sarah and forget it. Still, then I'm going to stir it all together with the fork until it's cool enough to touch. Why would I stir it with a fork until it's cool enough? I'm thinking in my head and I'm imagining again, if it's hot, I don't want to put my finger in there because then I might get burned and that would not be safe. So I want to stir with my fork until it's cool enough to touch it. I just answered my question. Then I'm going to knead the dough with my hands until it feels soft and smooth. All right, so I read it all the way through. Did I put anything in my bowls? Oh no, I did not, because that would be, sometimes gives you trouble. Like I said, Sarah forgot some steps. She's gonna, she's my guinea pig. So I'm gonna now spend some time and I'll go through it the second time and I will show you what we're gonna do. We're gonna take that 1/2 cup flour. All right, there's the 1/2 cup flour. It's really not that much when you look at how much there is in this bowl. And what was it I was supposed to add to that? I'm going to go back to my recipe and I'm going to see, measure the flour, the salt, and the cream of tartar. So now I'm going to check my recipe again. I need to have 2 tablespoons of salt. So the tablespoon side is the larger side. A big T, capital T, in a recipe means it's a tablespoon. And you want to make it level. because if I had it all mounded up, that would be more. It would be more volume of salt than I would really want for this recipe. So I have 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, and then I have 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. This is the part, again, it's optional, which means, that's right, you don't really need it. So I've got my 3 dry ingredients in the bowl. What was I supposed to do with those? I have to go back and check. Oh, I am supposed to stir the dry ingredients together with a fork. So I'm going to take my fork, and I'm thinking, why am I doing that? Well, it mixes it up. It spreads it out so that they're all mixed up together, and I don't have a big clump of salt in one spot and a little tiny bit of cream of tartar in a different spot. So now I am hearing the kettle boiling. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to ask an adult to pour it into a measuring cup. All right, so I am so lucky that I am an adult. I'm going to go get it. You can see the steam coming up. It's really hot, but I have my hands on just the plastic part. The thing about measuring that is really important, especially volume, when you stand on top of things, it's kind of hard to tell. So you always want to get down low, and you want to make sure, that it goes to the right line. It did. So I have a 1/4 cup of water. What was I supposed to do next? I'm going to look back at my recipe, and it says add about 5 drops of food coloring. So I want to make my food coloring, or my Play-Doh, red. So I'm going to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, I was wondering earlier, why would I put the food coloring in the water instead of in here? Well, I can see that it spreads out through all the water when I do that. And so that way it'll mix in better. Now I'm going to pour the water into the flour mixture. And then add the oil. How much oil again? 1 teaspoon. So 1 teaspoon of oil. I want to, again, be careful not to overfill it, because that would not give me the correct volume. So now I have all my ingredients, and my job is to mix it together with my fork until it's cool enough to touch. So I saw all that steam. That steam was hot. So I'm just going to stir. Looks kind of pink with this. And the cool thing about the fork is you can kind of mash it a little bit here. And as I mash, I'm getting more and more of the flour incorporated. I am not sure. I'm wondering, is it cool enough to touch? That would be a smart thing to do here. Maybe I'll just use a finger and very slowly get close enough. Oh, I can touch it. It doesn't feel that hot. It cooled off pretty fast, actually. So that's one of the nice things about this recipe, is that the boiling water just boils and it cools off fast because we have flour. So now my last thing is knead the dough with your hands until it is soft and smooth, which means I get to pick it up and play a little bit. So let's just talk a little bit while I'm smoothing this out about what and why and how I needed to ask myself those questions while I was doing this recipe. So when I'm thinking about why I do something, I want to imagine what would happen if I didn't do that. I'm imagining what would happen if I didn't add the oil, and I know what happened because it was really sticky when Sarah forgot to add the oil. So adding the oil makes it smooth. I'm also wondering, if I had left out the cream of tartar, would it look different? Well, I can tell you from experience, it wouldn't look any different. It just makes it so that if you leave it out, it won't get moldy or smell bad for a lot longer. That's what a preservative means. It preserves it for longer. So if you were thinking any of those questions, hopefully you have them answered now. I am feeling like this is pretty smooth. It's cool to the touch, and I have the chance now to go on to my math target for the day. We have some things that we're working on, and we're working on two-dimensional shapes first. So right now, I get to use my Play-Doh with whatever color I made, and I'm going to make some shapes. Okay, there are different types of triangles. Triangles are a polygon because they are a closed figure and they have straight sides. So this is where you can use your hands. If you don't have your hands, if you don't have a rolling pin, hands will work, but I have a little rolling pin, which works out pretty good actually. So if I want to make a triangle, triangles have how many sides? Try like a tricycle. How many wheels does a tricycle have? It has 3. And I want to make my triangles have 3 sides and 3 angles. So if you want to make a triangle, you want to either cut, or you could press your Play-Doh into a shape that has 3 sides and 3 angles. Oh, this is cool. So here is my triangle. You can see it has, looks almost like I could make a beak out of it. What else could I make with it? I'm trying to think. Do you have any ideas about what other things are shaped like triangles? Pennants for sports are triangles. And we have different types of triangles. There are triangles that have equal sides. Those are called equilateral triangles. And I wonder if you could tell, looking at this picture over here, if any of those are equilateral. Do they have the same length sides? What color do you think it would be? Well, I'm thinking this blue one up at the top looks kind of equilateral. It looks almost like they all the same sides. And then we have another type of triangle that's called a right triangle. And a right triangle has a corner like a piece of paper. I kind of like to make this sign because it looks like a corner. And that's called a right triangle because a right angle is in that corner. So maybe you could try to make a triangle with a right corner. So if I'm going to do that, I would cut with my knife and I'd try to make it look like one of the corners was a piece of paper corner. That's my right angle. And there we go. We've got a right triangle. We also have another type of triangle that is called an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle has 2 sides that are the same and 1 side that is different. And it might be long or it might be short. So you could have a really long, kind of squashed looking triangle that might be like the roof of a house. Or you might have one that's a little more pointy, like this one up here that's orange right there. That kind of looks more like maybe a princess hat. And so those are isosceles. And then we have the last kind over here, which is purple. There we go. The purple triangle is a scalene triangle, which means that every single side has a different length. So I think that you could probably find some triangles around your house too and see if you could figure out, are they equilateral? Are they scalene? Are they isosceles? And then see if you could maybe match it. Let's say I'm looking around here and can I see any good triangles? Maybe I'm just going to make one up. I'm going to see if I can make one that looks like it's equal sides. And if I wanted to measure it, I could say, oh, this one goes that way, that one's that way. I'm going to cut it And I think I've got an isosceles triangle. All right, so we're done with triangles. We're going to move on to quadrilaterals. I'm wondering, what do we have that makes you think of quadrilateral? Quads. How many of you have ever ridden a quad? It has how many? It's like an ATV, if you don't know what a quad is. And how many wheels does a quad have? It has 4, and that's what quadrilaterals have. They have 4 sides. Quadrilaterals are the most common shape that we see everywhere because we use paper. We use paper, we use houses, and we live in houses. We have TVs. I would love it if you just looked around where you are right now. I'm in a place where there are so many quadrilaterals. I'm looking at my food coloring box. This is a rectangle, which is a quadrilateral. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, which is, you know, I've got my cream of tartar. Those are all quadrilaterals. Now, we're going to try to make some quadrilaterals using our Play-Doh. So first type of quadrilateral most people have around almost everywhere is a rectangle. A rectangle has 4 sides, and I can cut my Play-Doh so that I have a shape that is a rectangle with 4 sides. It also has to have 4 right angles. We talked about a right angle. A right angle is an angle that is like a corner of a piece of paper. So over here, I'm wondering, if we were gonna look and think what colors are the quadrilaterals that are rectangles in this picture, what colors would we see? I can see up there at the top, we've got a green one. We've got a blue, and there's a yellow on the bottom part, and we have a light blue color as well. So we've got lots of rectangles. Now we're going to make a parallelogram. You can take your rectangle. It is a parallelogram because it has 2 sides that will never ever touch, even if we drew lines out forever. We've got some parallel lines here, and we have another set of parallel lines that go down this way. If I drew these lines forever and ever and ever, they would never touch. That's what makes a rectangle a parallelogram. But I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to make a parallelogram where they don't have right angles, which is a little trickier. The nice thing about Play-Doh is if you mess up, you can always do it again and just squash it all back together. So here is another parallelogram, and if I drew these lines forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, they would never touch. And if I drew these lines forever and ever and ever, they would never touch. There are some things out in the world that are parallel. I'm thinking, if you like Thomas when you were a kid, Thomas the Tank Engine, or the trains, they were always going on parallel lines because train tracks are parallel. They have to keep the trains up, and they never ever touch, and they always go in a parallel line. So let's go on to another one. Let's try one more quadrilateral. Let's try a quadrilateral that has only 1 set of parallel lines, and it is one, if you have pattern blocks, if you remember pattern blocks, it's called a trapezoid. So I want to make 2 lines that are parallel, and then I can cut the ends any way I want. I just have to make them be a straight line. So I could cut them that way, this one this way, and that is still a trapezoid because it has 2 parallel lines. Only 1 set of them. This one does not. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about a few more shapes that we have. One shape is a pentagon. We've got a pentagon. Pentagons have 5 sides and 5 angles. This is a regular pentagon. Pentagons that are regular, they're just like, oh yeah, every single thing's the same. It's not that exciting. But you could also make an irregular pentagon, which means you're going to make a pentagon that has 5 sides with different lengths. Everyone kind of seems to think, oh, that's the only way a pentagon could be. But I bet you could make maybe 5, maybe even 10, maybe more different pentagons that are all different. You just have to have 5. Pent means 5. So if I was going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I kind of have a crazy looking pentagon right there because it is not regular. It's irregular. You can see that shape. It's kind of stretched out. It looks like this. It has 5 sides, but it's not exactly the same. So this note is for parents. You can always give kids some quizzes. You could make a shape and ask them, what shape did you just make? You could also give them a direction such as, I want you to make a shape that has 3 sides and 2 of the sides are the same. And see if your student can create an isosceles triangle. You could also create different matching activities where you could go around the house and find some quadrilaterals and have your student go and make that same shape using their Play-Doh. Or you could also have like a quiz where you make the shape and they have to go find something similar in the house too, or label it. Labeling things is really good use of time for vocabulary and for practice, because we need a lot of repetition, especially for words that we don't generally talk about every day. So pentagons and hexagons are not things that we generally talk about with our students. And so being able to repeat them a lot helps a lot. So we have some hexagons here. That's the 6-sided figure. And this is a good example of how we have some regular set shapes. So over here we have a normal, what you would say the hexagon. We've got another one that's 6 sides here too. All right. So here are some extensions that we have. We would like, if you would like to, you can then go on to 3-dimensional shapes or forms. And I have some examples here that you could make with your students. And we've got like instead of rolling it out, they could form it. So they could have a little cone shape or a cube shape. And after that, they could also use, you could have them talk about what you find in your house, like boxes, for example. Boxes have 3 dimensions, and so do a lot of other, like here's an example of a cylinder, okay? And we have tents. That's a good example of a triangular prism. So think about what you have in your house and try to have your kids match what you have there. So we also have a few other ideas for you. If you liked making this, you can use it and you can maybe add it to your reading. Maybe you want to make, I'm going to think about my class. We were reading Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, and I really like one of the characters in there. His name's Timmy, and he's a little mouse. Maybe I want to make a mouse out of my Play-Doh, and it would go with my book. You could decide to have your students use their math skills to double the recipe and make twice as much, and then they'll have to add some fractions together. We could also have them make more forms using toothpicks. And with science, you can always decide to change one of these variables. What would happen if you used a different type of flour? Or what would happen if you used a different type of salt, or more or less of certain things? And then of course there's art. If you wanted to be able to maybe blend colors, make multiple different colors of Play-Doh.
Thanks for tuning in to Medford Anywhere Learning TV. Medford School District is a place where all are learning, and learning is for all.